Hi, my name is Rob Ryder, speaking out of West Cornwall in England, and I'm joined today by Patrick Quanton from Andalusia in Spain. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Rob. Nice to see you again.
Yes. So this is kind of a follow-on from a seminar we did in the summer in Penzance that I've been trying to get you over for a while to do to give us a foundation to work off as trying to get people to see life as an energetic process. That was the idea. And I recommend anyone who wishes to see this conversation tonight really to try and listen through that seminar. It's in 4 parts previous to this, in 5.5 hours. So just your words very quickly on the seminar when you came over, how you think it went and did it serve its purpose?
I think it did. It was very nice to have the opportunity to actually bring this information out to people. It all came about because of the publication of a book here in Spain, which then got translated into English. But it's mainly about trying to help people to see life as an energetic thing rather than a physical thing. Because science has given us that information about 100 years ago, that everything in creation is energy. So life is energy. All the physical stuff is energy. And if we want to find solutions to our physical problems, also our health problems, then we really need to get into understanding a bit more about the energy of life. So it was great to have the opportunity to talk about all that and bring that into a more concrete form to people. And I'm very grateful to you for being able to record the sessions and put them out on platforms so that people can actually see them later on, so that they're there to be reviewed and re-listened to. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, it was obviously a team effort to get that done. We're all working on a budget of 0 and it's just all about the project. So we quite enjoyed it and we feel like we've got a platform to work off now. So, but tonight I don't want to start at the book, Your Health in Your Hands. That's something we're going to come to. I want to start with this book, Why Me, Science and Spirituality as Inevitable Bed Partners, with yourself and Eric Boalder. So I've only got a couple of questions tonight, really. But before I ask the big questions, can you just give us a little background into the book, how you and yourself and Eric got together and what was the purpose of the book?
Yeah, the book is a result of a few decades of research. Eric just stepped into my office, my clinic, because he'd heard from some of my clients that I worked with energies. And so he wanted to present me with his thoughts and his research on general cosmic energies. The pyramids played a big part in that as well. So I was fascinated by what he told me, although I didn't understand a word he said, but it fascinated me. So we stayed together and worked together in the sense that I posed him questions and I tried to understand what he meant by these energies and energy lines and energy combinations. And eventually, I think after about 20 years or so, we decided that it was time to put some of this information on paper. So that is how the book came about. Things have evolved a lot since then. We've got a lot more information to put into a more definite book, definite in the sense of more straightforward answers to life's questions, if you like. But this particular book, the first book, laid the foundations of trying to look at life in an energetic way, and a very specific energetic way, as in what energies are we talking about, and how can we view them, group them, see how they evolve one into another, and so on and so forth. So that was the purpose of the book. And I think, although some of the conclusions, the physical conclusions, the conclusions for our everyday life and the structure of everyday life that we came to in that book are maybe not what we would say now. We probably would modify it a bit more. But in any case, it gives you the idea of how we've approached the question of what is energetic life and how does it come about? You know, how does creation begin? Because you can't understand life if you don't understand creation. And as we said, everything is energy. So how does matter come forth from energy? What energy is it? Where does it change over from being energetic, waves and frequencies and all that, into actual material things we can measure, things we can see or feel or smell or touch. So the book is really the foundation, laying down the foundation of thinking in energetic terms as far as creation and life is concerned.
Yeah, so that's really, now I'm going to throw the probably the biggest question out there at you straight away. Now, I've listened to lots of people, philosophers and scientists talking about this question. He seemed to be getting close, but nobody's has convinced me that they themselves believes they've got the actual answer. And since we've been working together over the years, the only thing I can say is I don't know whether you're right or wrong about anything. And I presume anyone listening today should make up their own mind. But at least there's no, it seems at least to be clear in your mind. So when we talk about the big question, we have, say, if I put a line there, all that side is creation. But then to the other side is, you would say, where creation come from. And science can explain a lot about a creation, but it seems to struggle about where it come from. There's different ideas. There's kind of what people call dualistic religious ideas, with like a super being, separate God that kind of zapped the universe into existence. Some people think that it existed eternally and will exist, but that kind of doesn't give it an explanation. The closest understanding I've came to is what the people are calling non-dualistic, which is basically creation and creator is one and the same, different aspects of the same thing. So basically we've got what we see as time and space now, an experience, a universe. You can't create something out of nothing. So there must have been, if not something, some potential to create the universe. So if we can just take it back to, say, a couple of seconds before creation, and your interpretation or explanation of the seed of the universe.
Yeah, it is interesting to note that, or science in general, is able to explain, and bear in mind, explanations are only theories, they're not truth. But science, mainly following the materialistic point of view, are able to, in their eyes anyway, are able to explain creation in general, and they do the same with life, how life comes into being. They can explain everything from the moment after the creation. I mean, creation, they call it the Big Bang, a few bits of seconds after that Big Bang, they start explaining how things then have developed. They do the same with life. They explain how a fetus grows, from which cell line it comes, and so on and so forth. And so they explain life, but they don't know how that first cell is being created. No, in human life, it comes from the seeds from male and female come together. And then magically, one cell appears which seem to have information from male and information from female. They don't know how that happens. The same way, the universe, they don't know how the Big Bang happened. But if it happened, this is what happened afterwards. So really, the problem remains the same. It's trying to get an idea of how creation can start. Let's not go on about how it evolves. That, to a great extent, you can find in the book. But how does it start? How does life come about? So how does that first cell, human cell, which will create a human being, how does that come about? Now, as we said, it's all energy. So don't go and look for proteins and fats and sugars and so on. You need to think in terms of energies. So there are some interesting things to consider. If we take a plant grows from a seed. There's some interesting observations about that. One is the seed is extremely small. You could almost say that there is no space inside the seed for anything of any substance to be formed. So if you think about this oak tree or any other plant, just being inside the seed, you can't imagine where all that information could be and how that information is then transformed into something material, a plant, a human life. Another interesting observation is that a seed can lie in the ground or in your cellar or wherever for a very long time. You know, they have been able to grow plants from ancient seeds from Roman and Greek times that they've found by chance in a pot somewhere, and they've been able to grow plants from that. So how long have these seeds been sitting there without feeding, without anything that would sustain life in that seed? So there is no life in that seed. But from the moment it starts sprouting, life begins. It's the same with the universe, or you can imagine it would be the same with the universe. Saying, on the one hand, that the universe has always been and will always be is not a very logical statement to make, in the sense that within this universe, nothing stays the same. Nothing is as it was before. Even the solar system, even the whole space organization changes. It changes all the time. So then you have to consider the fact that it started somewhere, and if it starts somewhere, then it will finish somewhere too, just as everything else in creation does, not only life, but also planets, stars, meteorites, all of that. They come into being and disappear. So the universe, as scientists are agreeing on, has come from what they call the Big Bang, or let's say a magic moment from which everything has sprouted, just like the plant seed, a magic moment that starts creation. So you can imagine, or you could imagine if you wanted to, that the universe also comes from a seed, which may have been lying, somewhere, but it's outside the universe that we see and that we experience. That's important to understand. It can't come from inside. The seed of the plant bursts open, and the plant grows in the outside of the seed world or space. So the universe, our universe, occupies a particular space, and we're inside that. From inside, you can't see what's outside. Yeah, our red blood cells don't understand that they're inside a creation, that they're inside a universe, if you like. So the universe itself must have come from a seed. That seed, just like the seed of the physical seed of the plant, we could say occupied virtually no space at all. And it grows once it sprouts, once the Big Bang happens, it creates its own space, pushing aside the space outside of the seed, just like a plant does. So it grows outside itself. Inside there, inside the seed, there is no space, but there is energy. Energy always is and always will be, not only inside our universe, but it has to be on the outside as well, because you can't create something from nothing. You can't create a universe without a seed, one, but also without an environment that seed lies in. When a plant seed is kept in your cellar, in a dark place and a dry place, it will never sprout. Never. So you need a seed and you need an environment for the seed. So you have an energetic seed, which is a combination of energies that are fixed, they're put together, and they don't change. The seed of your plant doesn't change unless the circumstances allow it. And these circumstances can make the seed rot away, yeah, or dry up, or anything like that, or be crushed. So you could imagine the possible seed of the universe having the same future. However, under specific circumstances, the seed of the plant will sprout and a plant will start to grow. So maybe the seed of the universe needed specific circumstances in which it could open up and start to grow. The plant seed requires heat and moisture. Yeah? Now it's interesting this, because when we talk about energies, when you want to expand your energy field, you can do that by warming it up and by letting it swell up, making it swell. So put more, allow more pressure for the seed to come out. So the plant seed, heat and water. The heat will make it break open, make it swell up, intensifies the energies inside the no space seed. So they start vibrating more, therefore creating more pressure inside the seed. And water, which will help in a physical world, it will help the matter to swell up, to enlarge, so to take up more space. Now, a similar thing could happen with the seed of the universe. So we have this compacted, fixed set of energies. If the temperature goes up around that fixed field of energy vibrations, and the pressure on the field from the outside increases, then this energy field may well burst open. There is your Big Bang. Of course, we don't know what the circumstances were, or even now are, outside our universe. But it's a model to think about, because it would be similar to what we see happening in every step of creation here within the universe. So it bursts open, it sprouts to life. And what happens then is that the energies that were fixed inside the seed, whether that's the universe seed or plant seed, are then developing because they now found the space to develop in. And because of the circumstances around the seed, the new plant or the new universe, this can further expand into that space. Now we have created space inside. There was no space in the seed, but once it bursts open, the growth that happens, the development that happens, whether it's a plant or it's the universe, creates space inside. It blows up, yeah, like a balloon, like an air balloon. It blows up and it takes up more space, and it creates space for itself inside. Inside that space, lots of things happen. Lots of things are being created from the energies that were locked into the seed. So that is, if you like, a model where you can think about the Big Bang as to what actually happens by looking at what happens around us. And that way we can visualize, if you like. We can visualize how the Big Bang might have happened.
Yeah. My question out of that would be, obviously, because you're talking about there the creation of time and space at the Big Bang. So, like I say, in the seed, there was no time and space. There's all this information that is fixed. And then as it expands, it's actually creating time and space as it's expanding. So there's a couple of observations I could point out into that. So as we know the universe is expanding quite at a large rate, And a lot of people are saying, you know, what does the universe expand into? Or is it possible that it's actually creating time and space as it's expanding? So it's not expanding into space, it's actually creating space as it's expanding. Which would then you would need a medium to expand into, which couldn't be a physical thing, would have to be an energetic thing. And then I've heard another observation of, if we're going right to the principal seed, so the seed of the universe, would it be possible that if this is a big if, because we could be, like you say, a seed, our universe, in a bigger entity that's in a bigger entity, but would it be possible that the universe is before time and space the seed, and that for that initial Big Bang, if there was no space outside of it, could there have been an increase of pressure inside from some kind of force that wanted to be alive, as it were? So I see two options there. One is an outside influence of the seed, and the other one is, if this is a big if our universal seed is the beginning of the whole of creation in possible existence, would there then be a pressure coming from the inside, which would mean we'd have to give some kind of force to? A lot of people use the word love. Again, these different ideas from that. So my question out of that would be, would it, even though it's difficult to explain this, because at the very beginning, we're not talking in terms of space. So it's quite a difficult concept to get your head around. But could there be two options, whereas the initial seed has outside influences to increase the pressure? Or could there be some kind of force from within this seed that wants to burst open and create?
Well, first of all, the universe is at the same time expanding and contracting. It is expanding in some places and contracting in other places. So it's changing shape and it's changing form all the time. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the forces of creation are twofold. Just the same as with the seed for the plants. The outside circumstances, everything has an outside. There is something on the outside. I know that's very difficult to visualize or to have some idea of when we're talking about the universe, but it has to be, because the universe, just like the plant, is growing into another space by creating its inner space. It's blowing itself up, so it pushes other things away. It creates the space because of the fixed energy. Energy also has got pressure, or energy fields have got pressure inside the field. And a balance of energy fields is between the pressure inside a particular field and the fields around it. Think about our weather systems. The pressure inside a high pressure area, the pressure inside a low pressure area, and they influence each other. And depending on how high or how low the pressure is, one can grow into the other or takes over the other, changes it. So I think the outside of the universe, we shouldn't be thinking of in terms of a static thing. That itself are energies that are moving all the time, but they do play a major part in how our universe is expanding, just the same as it is with the plant. Whether the plant grows fast, grows slowly, grows weird, in a weird shape, it grows up to the light, and so on and so forth. So it's influenced by its outside world. And it's the same for the universe. It's still, at this moment in time, to a degree, it's still influenced by the outside world. Yeah, the energies of the outside world. Now, when the seed sprouts, it starts to create space. Why? Because the frequencies, the energies that are locked into the seed are under pressure. And so when you get an opportunity and the pressure builds up and then it bursts open, these energies can now start to move away, start to push the boundaries, and start to create a way to do that. So different plant seeds create different plants because they create space inside, the plant itself, or the upcoming plant. They create space in a different way. And the differences lie in the information that's contained in the seed. So in other words, the kind of combination of energies that the seed holds. Creating that space creates a movement. Yeah, things inside start to move. We can see that in the universe because we can see the universe moving. It's moving outward, and other places it's moving inward, but it's moving. So everything in it moves with it. We see internally, when we look at creation closer at home, the solar system, everything is moving. Even the things that we consider to be stationary in our skies, we know from human history that they move. The current pole star is not the old pole star. It is moved. So when the seed opens up and it begins to develop, the plant, the universe, it creates space for itself. But it also creates movement. It starts to grow, so it expands, and at times it contracts. Think about the expansion in springtime and the contraction in the autumn and wintertime of our plants. They get smaller, they lose their leaves, and so on and so forth. So the universe has also, after the Big Bang, created space and movement. From the moment you have movement, you create time. When nothing moves, when nothing changes, there is no time, right? It's maybe difficult to think about something that never changes, because everything that we know, including the universe, changes all the time. But think about it. Inside the seed lies the information for the plant to grow the whole plant. Nothing happens to that seed. Nothing changes inside that seed for 3 days, for 3 months, for 300,000 years, if you like. When nothing changes inside that seed, time doesn't exist. It's exactly the same whether you plant the seed this year or next year, or in 3 years' time, or whatever. So what creates time is movement. And since everything is moving inside our universe, we can put a time frame on it. We can say, this happened later, this happened earlier, and so on. Time is not the fourth dimension. Time isn't a dimension. Time is just movement. It's part of the creation of space, because the space is continuously changing. And that is what creates time.
Yeah, so when I've seen these visuals of brain activity, and it's quite strangely, it looks a little bit like a universe with all the neurons and all the connections. And I'm just throwing this out there because we're trying to understand things that are possibly beyond our comprehension. But does it seem that everything in existence is existing within a universal mind? And as the brain activity we're seeing is like the way the universe works and the way energy and information moves all about and interacts with each other. And do you think that the possibility of a universal mind will explain, like when I go to sleep, there is no time. When I'm really, really tired, time doesn't exist because I'm gone to the world. And all of a sudden, maybe I might start dreaming and activity happens and time and space appears in my dreams. And that would explain the thing that people say, well, what's at the edge of the universe? Well, there's a tree and a wood. Well, behind that, there's a wall, and you go on forever and ever and ever. But if you explain the universe as a mind that's creating within itself, and then there could be potentially lots of universes all interacting with each other and then maybe setting off seeds. Is that a thought in your process at all, that the universe is activity of some great universal mind?
Yeah, when you said about watching the brain activity, then of course you're not watching a mind, you're watching activity, you're watching movement. And it's visualized in a particular way. As far as creation is concerned, as far as life is concerned, basic life, we talked about plant life. All the information for the development of that life is contained in the seed. Yeah, you don't need a god, a white man with a long beard, and a mind of his own, if you like, to explain that. It simply is an explosion or development of energies, which are turned into at some points, are turned into material stuff. Okay, so in a sense, it's predetermined. Again, when we're thinking or when we're using the word mind, it sounds to me as if it's something that you could influence or that can have the sense of reasoning. A mind, I can make up my mind about something. Well, the universe or the plant doesn't make up their mind. It's not the mind. It's a predetermined route that it takes of development. But there are influences. As we said before, the outside, the space in which the creation happens within that space, but the new space that is being created, whether it's the outside of the plant or it's the outside of the universe, outside of that, there is an environment, an energetic environment with pressures and temperatures and what have you, and they will influence what is happening inside that new universe. It's not a mind. I link a mind with a living creature, and they're not even, I mean, does a plant have a mind? I don't think so. It does what it's programmed to do. It has a set of reaction patterns to certain environmental influences, and it responds to that in an automatic way. In a sense, that is the basis of life. That is what all life does. It responds in a pre-programmed way to its outside environment. As we get higher up the ladder of evolution, and we come to the primates and humans, we then like to think that we have a mind through which we are able to control our outside world. Well, that's only the very surface of things as they are, of life as it is. Our life continues because of the pre-programmed, predetermined reaction patterns that we use every moment of our lives. Our minds, our conscious mind, has no idea how it should get to the oxygen into the air, how it should get the oxygen from the air into the system. It would not know what to do with an apple that I'm eating. It would not know how to destroy any toxins or how to clean up my system. My conscious mind has no concept of doing that. So to say that life itself is a mind, I think it's going to make things a lot more difficult to understand, and it's going to create a lot of confusion when we're actually talking about the human mind. Because in my opinion, then we have to create a different word or a different concept for the human mind, because I can't compare it to the way nature operates. Yeah, the way these energy fields operate. They have movement, so they have life, but they don't think about it. And they cannot change their patterns.
So when we talk about these pre-programmed patterns, so that, do you believe then there's some kind of, now there are difficulties with using the right words. So obviously people, you can say forces, source, people use the word God, but then it's a fine word, but you have to define what you mean. But if there is a program pattern, which there definitely does seem to be, and everything's going on a path that was set out, do you think there's some kind of, for want of a better word, intelligent force that put that pattern together? That doesn't have to be conscious, because to be conscious, there has to be something to be conscious of. So if you're a seed with no time and space, then you can't be conscious. But is there some kind of force that has created these patterns? Maybe not consciously,
right?
But
yeah, it is a very good question, but yes, there is. Think about it. Think about it. There is always a force, because there's interactions between energies and energy fields. So there are forces that are creating the change. Yeah. So differences in potential, say in voltages, create a movement, a streaming, a movement of ions, energy. So these are the forces, differences in voltages, if you like. But think about it, that will always be the case as long as there is movement. If I take my liver, for instance, yeah, and my liver gets confronted with a lot of things, and it asks itself the question, what is the power that actually puts me into this position and where I have to deal with all this stuff? Well, that power, the liver may think it's the heart. It brings me all this rubbish and I have to deal with it. So the heart is the power that rules my life, my existence, is behind it all. The heart thinks it's his mind. It's the mind of the person, or it's the brain function that determines how hard I must work. So there's my boss. And I'm the person who sort of regulates everything. And my life is regulated by the people I live with, by the governments of the country, by the European Union, by the United Nations, by the World Bank, and the work and life on Earth is determined for a great deal by the sun. And the sun belongs to a power that keeps it in place and that makes it run. And that belongs to a power that, so wherever you want to put the word God, be my guest. But it's layer upon layer or influence upon influence of energetic developments, one within another, Russian doll system. Yeah, and from the inside, you can only look at the next level. If you're willing to look, you can see it. There is what keeps me in my place. And that one kept in place by another one and another one, another. Power upon power on power and power, forces within forces.
Do you think then, because human beings are quite strange creatures in that the fact that we can have this conversation seems to mess with the universe a little bit. The universe seems to be running on unconscious programs, and then we come along and kind of question everything. Do you believe? So do you believe these layers or levels, should we say, of consciousness? Because you can define consciousness or in a very simplistic way, which doesn't require a conscious mind, in that it's just the ability to process information and respond to it. So you could, on that level of consciousness, you could talk about an atom. But when we're talking about the consciousness we're talking about now, we're talking that ability to receive information, process it, respond, but be aware of it at the same time, or to be conscious of our own consciousness. So does this seem that this is a fluke, or there's an inherent, should we say, want of the universe to become aware of itself?
Yes, good awareness. Consciousness has to be defined properly, and so on and so forth. But to keep it short, I think what we're talking about here is awareness of the outside world and the influences of the outside world. Of course, animals, plants are aware of their surroundings and respond to it. Anything that responds to it must first receive that information, and then the response happens. So there is that level of consciousness. But indeed, when we're talking about assembling information, retaining information, and putting it together in different ways, bits of information, putting them together in different ways, that's a different level of consciousness that an animal doesn't have. Yeah. You may be angry at your dog because it's done something wrong. When you happen to be there when he actually does it, then you may respond to your angriness, being angry at him and so on. And he will make, or he can see the link at that moment in time. But two things happen afterwards. One, half an hour later, the next morning, don't talk to him about it because he won't know what you're on about. You know, he's forgotten about the whole incident. And secondly, he will never bear a grudge for you being angry at him unfairly because it wasn't me, Dad. Yeah. So there's a different level of consciousness. But yes, human beings have that different level of consciousness of being able to analyze, take things apart, and put them back together in a different way. And you could then think, well, yeah, you could, that would mess with the universe. But it isn't messing with anything. It's not because you question things that you are actually changing the bigger picture. You know, we live on a tiny planet somewhere in a universe that we can't imagine how large it is. And we pretend that if we make a mistake here, that will change the course of the universe. It won't. It won't make a slight bit of difference. So if you then take the world population and you think about what you're doing and what your neighbor is doing, is that going to make a difference to anything in the long run? No, it doesn't. It's like an ant crawling up an elephant's back and thinking that it's going to strangle the beast. It's nothing in the big scheme of things. So we are created by nature, or by the universe, how you want to call it, because that is part of the development of the universe that was already contained within the seed of the universe. That at some point of that development, the universe, nature, needed to become aware of itself. So it needs to comprehend on a conscious level, comprehend life, the universe, creation. So to become aware of itself, its surroundings, nature. It's part of the development of the universe. So it's not a freak thing. It's not a mistake from God or whoever you want to, whatever you want to call the creator or creation, I should say. Not a mistake. It can't be. You know, anything that a plant turns into was already in the seed as a possibility. Not saying that it would develop under all circumstances, but it was a possibility. If it's not a possibility, it won't happen. In other words, the thing that is developing into a non-possible route, taking a non-possible route, will die, will fall apart, will disappear. It will not develop any further than beyond a certain point. So humanity is the part of the universe that is needed to become, for the universe to become aware of itself, of its own creation. And that's what we're doing. But let's not be cocky about it. We are at the very early stages of that awareness process. So we do make an awful lot of mistakes. And to show you that we're only at the beginning of this process is that only 100 years ago, we came to the conclusion that matter wasn't really the important bit, but energy is the important bit. And now 100 years later, we're still not even starting to think in terms of energies, life and nature in terms of energies. We're still doing it chemically. We're still doing it on material things and material influences. So we need to become a lot more aware.
Yeah, so probably just checking the time. We've got hopefully time for one last question. We've got 15 minutes. So
right,
as regard of this path that nature's put itself on, that is pre-programmed, that it's going a certain path, that the bits of nature that can't stay on that path will kind of fade away. We've come into this picture now as the self-aware part. Now, there's a lot of talk, and again, it's okay using words, but you have to define what you mean. So since technology's advanced with AI, there's this talk about simulation theory now. So these are conversations we wouldn't have had 100 years ago because we wouldn't have had artificial intelligence and these VR sets to actually imagine what that even meant. But you have these virtual reality worlds that don't exist in time and space, but are basically creating time and space via just pure energy. Because you can put these VR sets on and you enter a world that obviously isn't all out there. It's this energetic world that is completely time and space real. But you as kind of are the only conscious self-aware bit in the whole experience. And that is an AI created, pre-programmed experience that can create within itself as it's been pre-programmed. It's not using an imagination, it's pre-programmed to create an experience with lots of possibilities. And then we come in with these VR sets to experience that, and we can interact with that. And a lot of people are saying, is that a fair comparison of the universe, in that the universe is set out on this pre-programmed path, has created this reality that's moving about and going somewhere. And now, like the avatar of the VR set, the human being has now come in to look into this world and to actually experience its own creation. This is kind of what people are calling simulation theory, which, like I say, we couldn't have asked this question even 15, 20 years ago because we wouldn't have known what even that meant. But it's a way of using an illustration.
But it's simulation. Yeah. The reality is still the same, because when you have a VR set on and you're in this virtual reality world that you seemingly can interact with, right? If you're in a room and somebody puts an obstacle in front of your feet, you will fall over, right? So you're not actually in the virtual reality world. It is only a simulation. And that's the difference. Because the world that we are in, we've been created by that world. That is different from making contact with a world, being able to interact with the world. That is not proof that you are part of that world. Yeah, that is. I mean, if you want to take an example of that, if you cast your vote in order to make a difference and to influence the government, then that is how you can influence the government, but you're not part of the government, and you never will be part of that government. Yeah. So there is a it's a similar world. It's a simulation of a world, but it's not the world that we've been created in. And we can't escape the world that we've been created in. Just as the plant can't escape the ground, the soil that it's rooted into. Yeah. If it wants to move, if it wants to move from Cornwall to Spain, it can't.
I think that, like I say, it's an illustration that I'm hoping if these conversations work, we'll have a later conversation further down the line about, you've talked about the purpose of death. Life and death is just part of nature. It's part of everything. But the idea of simulation, this is what I struggle with, is that with this explanation that I'm being given, is they say everything is consciousness. Consciousness is coming into the world, and the human body is a vehicle to experience this reality. But to be conscious, you need something to be conscious of. So that goes way too much to cover tonight. We can get this maybe to another time. What is the actual nature of the human being beyond the physical body? And I struggle with some of this, because then you have to, like I say, go into deeper of the mind that we couldn't go in tonight. But there's a lot of people are saying everything is consciousness. But again, to be conscious, there has to be something to be conscious of. And yes, my consciousness can only perceive this reality.
If you define consciousness as a sense, an awareness, I would say an unconscious awareness, an awareness of your surroundings, of your environment, then all life, even bacteria, have a consciousness. Yeah. But they do not know that they're there. There is no brain power. There's no nervous system that can retain that information and then tell them that they are there, and that yesterday they were somewhere else. So that's a different level. This is where terminology and the use of words makes it extremely difficult to have a conversation and to comprehend these things. So I don't think we need to go into that any further at this point.
Yeah. I think the most important thing, because this is just like an interesting first conversation tonight, just to get people thinking, really, and everyone's entitled to their own opinions. And again, regarding what we spoke about tonight, whatever the truth of the whole of reality is beyond our universe, it's bigger than my mind and yours. It is good to think about in a term of the way to start to think of life as an energetic process, because obviously the purpose of the conversation is for people to start becoming more independent of a system that doesn't want them to think that way, take more power over our lives. And if we can start thinking on terms of energy rather than physical, I think we can try to take a little bit of power back. And this was kind of an introduction to think about that tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's important to realize that it's not about who is right and who is wrong. I'm hoping that together, over the course of these conversations that we're having, that we are sowing some seeds. Yeah. And in the right circumstances, in the right minds, they may develop into something. And it's not so much the seeds that we're throwing out, it's the seeds that people pick up and take home with them. But you're all welcome. You're all welcome to have your own thoughts about it, to investigate, to put your own mind to it and come up with your own answers. Great. We only trying to start the process. If we can create the Big Bang, then everybody out there can then create their own reality.
Yeah, I think we want to know the progression of these next few conversations is basically individuals taking up their own power. And
exactly.
then if we start to do that, maybe these some of bigger questions that we're pondering on, maybe these bigger answers within us, and maybe we have more power within ourselves than we even know. And if we're an evolving species, especially, and our consciousness is evolving, then I made a video a while back called The Evolution of Being Less Stupid. Because if we're evolving, if our consciousness is evolving, then we have to say we don't know everything. We can't know everything because we're evolving. So we're at a stage where we're like a juvenile stage where you're in maybe just starting going to college and you're starting to take an interest in life, but you don't really know much about what it's about. And that's probably where humanity's at. And I think just opening up these conversations, and if there is something within the power within each human being that we have more power over our own individual lives than we know about, then I think it's better, rather than going out to try and change the world exteriorly and just create more and more conflict, we can see what we can do within our own power.
Yeah. Have a look at the inside of the universe. Never mind what's on the outside.
Yeah.
So.
Right, we'll leave that one there. And I think we'll have a chat before the next one, and it will probably be about the formation of the human being and the development, the development of the human being and the influences from conception through the pregnancy and birth, and especially the first few years. So thanks for that conversation tonight, and I'll